this week because
Yeah.
that was really annoying.
Yeah, those budget cuts really got.
Welcome, everybody, to the Week 6 edition 2017 Web.com podcast. Got a little bit of an interesting crew with me in the fact that Brock is not co-hosting tonight. Brock has a day off. And Caleb steps into the number 2 seat.
Yeah. It's going to be wild. It's like the classic backup quarterback waiting for his time to shine. Here I come. And
yeah, Brett Hundley, right? Am I right?
Yeah, call me Brett Hundley.
Wow, is that annoying?
Very awful.
So I had a list of things that I wanted to talk about today, a bunch of stats and interesting little tidbits, and I forgot the notebook that they were written on at school. So this now becomes an improv podcast, but that's okay because there's still plenty to talk about this week.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to start off with your game, Caleb.
Game of the week.
Game of the week against Tim. Nice little Pac-5 showdown. And there's a lot to say about both of these teams, but let's talk about what happened before the game even started, which was Web Scandal Week 2.
Yeah, so show up by Corv's house Sunday, right before noon, about 11:55, and we're just talking, and Tim's just like, "Oh my God, Andrew Sendejo's out." He's like panicking, trying to take him out of the lineup, and then he's like, "Oh my God, lineup set." And it was just like, you have to be kidding me. The week after all of this happened, the big scandal, the one who pretty much like was bitching about it the most, and then it happens to him. Like
the amount of F-bombs that Tim dropped on the message board, most of the time in sentences that were about just set your lineups, guys. Why do we even have to care about this? And then the very next week, Tim earns his first strike of the season.
Hey.
So, yeah, we're not. We're gonna have to work on improving this for week 7. Hopefully, no strikes next week. But yeah, a little bit of a rough start for Tim to the week, and it carried on all the way until the conclusion of the game, in which he lost to Caleb. Now, I tweeted out a little thing about Caleb's team and how it's unprecedented what you're doing right now, Caleb. Your performance with how your team is actually scoring right now has never been seen in web history. Let me explain. Caleb, you have 3 wins out of 6 weeks where you have scored less than 130 points. The previous high for less than 130-point victories in a single season was 1. No team has ever won more than 1 game in a single season in which they scored less than 130 points. You already have 3 of those.
All right, that's nice.
Okay, I'm not done. All right, Caleb, you are currently on pace to be the 2nd lowest scoring team of all time. And you are 4-2, and we're not even to the halfway mark of the season, and you're already halfway to an 8-win season, which has traditionally been a pretty good year for a web team. Let's see, what else did I have here? Yeah, you got a WIB of 2. Oh, okay, yeah, the WIBs. Right. Okay.
Right.
Here's Caleb's WIBs in the last 5 weeks. Ready for this? 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. Caleb is 3-2 in that stretch. There is only 2 weeks out of the last 5 in which you scored higher than the lowest scoring team in the for the week or you were the lowest scoring team for the week and you still have 3 wins out of those 5 games.
Yeah.
What the hell?
This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in fantasy football. Like this is, and like I'm not even like the lowest in like points against. I don't think. I'm pretty sure
this
Parker,
week. I'm not sure where how far ahead Parker was.
Parker's at 770. I'm at 776.
Okay.
Tim's at 775. So
right.
third in that regard, pretty close, but still.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that we're still scoring well under what we're used to, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later.
Mm-hmm.
But it's honestly just incredible. Like the whole like 130 and under thing, like that's impressive in itself. But it's like, okay, yeah, we're all scoring a little bit less, so maybe it's a little bit skewed. But the WIB thing, like. It's just you have 1 win already where you were the 1 WIB, which is kind of like one of those things where it's like, wow, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And then back-to-back wins as the 2 WIB. I mean, like Tim said, you're bringing teams down to your level.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird.
Shout out to whoever made the schedule. It's working out in my favor. I mean,
that's
any other way,
true.
I'd probably be like 1 or I don't even know. I shouldn't be in this position, but yet here I am.
Well, we're going to talk about, we're going to get into these other games and talk about some of these teams. We have 3 1-5 teams right now. And every single one of those teams is performing better than you are in every statistical way possible. And you just are the one that's able to pick up those victories. So, I mean, here you are, 4-2. Currently tied for the Pac-5 lead. So, I mean, whether or not that this can be sustained, this level of luckiness can be sustained, it doesn't matter because you're still tied right now for the Pac-5 lead as the lowest scoring team.
Yeah, and we're coming into conference play here. So,
right.
I got through the non-conference schedule through that. Like picking up wins against Parker and Dan, that's wild. It's in own right.
Traditionally, the Pac-5 has struggled in Big 5 play. This season, actually, the Pac-5 and Big 5 are tied right now at 11 wins apiece against each other. So it's been a little bit of a different season. That's not even to say that the Pac-5 is performing better.
Mm-hmm.
It's honestly just that there's 2 Big 5 teams that are 1-5, and both are considered the 2 unluckiest teams in Webb right now. But we'll talk about Carter and Kelvin later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Tim on the other side of this has a whole set of things to talk about for himself because he was coming off of back-to-back weeks of scoring 150 plus, and it seemed like his team was back, but then of course Odell got hurt, and then Zeke was on a bye, and then now he's going to be suspended, and now he's not suspended again.
Yeah, did you get that breaking news? It was Zeke suspension delayed because Judge is on vacation, available to play Sunday versus 49ers. Like, what the hell?
It's honestly such a roller coaster. I couldn't even handle it.
Yeah, it's unreal.
So, I mean, he's delaying that for a little while longer, but I've been talking to Tim all day today, and I have inside information that he is not feeling great about his team, as he shouldn't be, because we can objectively say that his team is not performing that well.
Yeah.
And this was something that we brought up in the beginning of the season. Obviously, he started with the week low, and it was kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Ripped off 4 straight wins, but he still really hasn't recovered in the way that you would like to see. And now with the injuries and Zeke eventually going to be out here, the starting lineup starts to look a little bit vulnerable. And, I mean, like this week was his lowest score of the season. He loses to the lowest scoring team in the league. And, I mean, he's only at a 3.5 WIB right now, which ties him for, I think it was 7th. So like it's very not good on a lot of fronts for Tim.
Pretty sure Parker's yelling, sorry. I think Gordon Hayward just died on the court. Oh, he's screaming. It sounds bad. Oh, God.
Are you sure Parker's not the one dying?
Yeah. Parker, did someone die? Here. Let me hear what's going on. Just a little improv here quick. Did someone die?
Hayward broke the fuck out of his leg like 6 minutes into the game.
All right,
Like
heard it here
it's
first, folks.
Snapped in half?
That's what it sounds like. I'm sure you can check Twitter. Wow. All right. Sorry
I'm not
about
going to
that.
be the one to say it, but I will be the one to say it. Karma's a bitch.
Yeah.
Here first.
All right, but yeah, back to Tim. Sorry about that. A little NBA talk, but like, yeah, his like the thing about him is his receivers, like Ty and Tyreek are so talented, but it's like boom or bust every week. Like Tyreek 19, 4, 15, 3, 12, 2. It's like, what the hell's going on? You don't know what you're getting week to week with these guys, so it's hard to really develop any sort of consistency with this lineup, especially with suspension looming and whatnot.
Yeah, and I mean that was what we were talking about today was, where is that consistent production without the Freeman and Zeke rocks in that lineup? And obviously the RB2 spot is pretty weak without Zeke in the lineup. But it's just one of those things where he's hitting the Dave Josh stretch.
Mm-hmm.
He's got me this week, and then he goes into that stretch. And honestly, if I was him, I would rather have the Zeke suspension start right now.
Oh yeah,
because 4 of those 6 games would then be against Dave and Josh, who obviously are not the premier talents of the league right now.
Hey, but Dave's looking better. All right,
Yeah, we'll talk about Dave because I do have good things to say about Dave.
Yeah, I wouldn't call those gimme games anymore. Really,
no, absolutely not gimme.
But like, yeah.
If there's anything about this season, it has proven that anybody can beat anybody.
Oh yeah, for
at
sure.
any given time, because it's already happened multiple times where strange things have occurred in that department.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, just kind of like moving into like the hot take session of this game, like I picked him to make the playoffs, as did a lot of people before the season. Potential Pac-5 winner. And now, just with how things have shaken out, and we're almost halfway through the season, and his team really has not super recovered, and it's only getting worse for him from a starting lineup standpoint, this could get gross pretty quickly to the point where we're looking at Tim, maybe, missing the playoffs, and not only that, but potentially having a higher draft pick than we thought, a draft pick that now belongs to Dave.
Yeah.
So that would be huge for Dave.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So nice job, Caleb. Good win this week, man.
Yeah, another shit show week, but we got the W, and looking forward to the rest of the season here. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on to the Mingo Moneymakers and the repairman car guy. So I got things from both sides on this one again. Interesting things about each of these teams. Start with my team. Another week high. So that's my 3rd of the season. Previously, I had never had more than 1 in a single year. So it's been a good year for me, obviously, for scoring, leading the league in that department still by a decent margin. I'm now over 170 points a game, which currently is 28 points over the league average right now for scoring. And to put it in perspective, the highest scoring team of all time, which was Brock, was 25 points over the league average for that season. So it's been pretty dominating, honestly, for my team. And it's behind the strength of my running backs. And everybody, I mean, knew that I had a pretty sizable hole in my receivers. But trade. Mingo's Moneymakers sends a second-round draft pick to the newly branded Tay and Nuke for Larry Fitzgerald.
Wow.
So the 8th scoring wide receiver, 34-year-old Larry Fitzgerald comes to the Moneymakers.
Yeah,
talk about it for me.
That's a move we were talking about. That last wide receiving spot was major hole on your team. So I mean, going out and getting Larry, who for the last few years has been like, all right, when is he gonna stop being Larry? And it just won't stop. It doesn't seem like, and giving up what you did for it. I mean, it works out for both sides. Parker's getting a little bit on the older side, so he's looking to get a few picks here, and it's not giving up too much. He's got decent depth at the wide receiving position. So like, you know, that's big for you to get Larry, someone who's gonna put up consistent points for each week, which is what you're lacking at the position. Really rounds out the roster nice for you.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty much like my thought process behind it was, you know, this is a guy who's going to give my team something that it hadn't had. Obviously that's dependent on if Fitzgerald stays healthy and continues to produce at age 34 into the late stages of the season. But even so, huge boost to that position, which has been super weak, and yet I've still managed to get points on a weekly basis. So this could be a huge lift for my team. The second round pick obviously is, it's a pretty decent price to pay for a guy who may only be around for, this season, potentially even. But, I have...
Yeah, those are the kinds of moves you have to make sometimes for that playoff push when something there. So, I mean...
And we talked about that as potentially being something that we were going to see a little bit more of moving forward, was going out and grabbing some of those veteran players for draft picks or young players. Because it makes a huge difference. I mean, Calvin proved it last season. Michael Crabtree helped him get to the title game. So, other thing with my team was the defensive performance.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, and honestly, though, after the noon games had ended, I had 65 points, and we were sitting there thinking, like, is this going to be a record-breaking performance? The defensive scoring record is 94 from Calvin in 2015, but I ended up with 83. So I mean, it's a high total, but nothing out of the ordinary for a good defensive team. We've already had a score higher than that this season with Dan at 84.
Yeah,
but I mean, still big week from the defense again. Currently second behind Dan by 0.5 points per game.
Okay.
So, there's 3 teams averaging over 60 points from the defense: me, Dan, and Josh. So,
wow, yeah.
And the last thing I was going to mention, mostly just to rub my crank a little bit. Currently have theoretical wins of 13. So projected to not lose another game.
Yeah. All right.
Let's ride.
Man, could have been an undefeated season.
I know. Damn it. Come on.
Yeah, but I want to talk about Carter for a little bit here. See what
I really do, because the story with Carter is that he's 1-5, but it's impressive that he is 1-5 because of how he's performed this season.
Sort of like the opposite of me.
Yes. And for Carter, it sucks even worse because he obviously traded his first-round draft pick to Tim, and now he's hitting this like unlucky stretch. And he's one of the 3 worst teams in the league record-wise right now. So the Saquon sweepstakes is alive for Carter's team, and that would turn into Tim. So
God, if Tim got Saquon, that would just be
yeah, that would be awful. I would fold the league before I let that happen.
okay. Good call. Good call.
But so Carter is currently the number. Oh man, I gotta remember this here. I don't have it written down. I think number 5, the number 5 or number 6 scoring team. That's what it was. So
Okay.
he's the number 6 scoring team right now, and is 1-5 with a 4.2 WIB. So I mean, he has a higher WIB than Tim right now. He has a higher WIB than Parker right now. So conference opponent, conference powerhouse Parker. He's currently theoretically performing better than him on a weekly basis.
Yeah, here he is at 1-5.
Right.
That's
That's been the thing for him. He's got the luck factor right now, sitting at a nice 1 or a 0.15. So
Wow.
essentially tied for the unluckiest team in the league with Calvin, who is 0.14.
yeah.
So both of them have been seriously hindered by luck this season in their 1-5 runs thus far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look at what he had to start at wide receiver this week. I mean, he got a combined 8.3 points out of wide receivers: Snead, Lewis, and Goodwin, which isn't exactly what you want to look at wide receiver. Obviously, he has injuries and whatnot, but it's not great. Luckily, he has this defense to fall back on right now, which had a big week this week. So,
yeah. The offense in the last 2 weeks has I'm echoing.
what?
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, we're good. We're good. Technical.
We'll just edit that out.
So, last 2 weeks for Carter's offense, 62 points a game. So it's not good for anybody not familiar with offensive scoring. Not great. But as you said, 81-point performance from the defense this week, which is a huge deal because this was the number 2 scoring defense last season, and it had looked very, very not good this season.
Yeah, it was a weird
sitting
transition to this year, but
yeah, 47.4 points per game before this week was actually, I believe, the lowest in the league at that point.
That's crazy.
And, he comes back with the 81-point day, but it's just, it's not enough to get him a win. So the ride continues. I know one of his questions was, why do bad things happen to good people? And that I can answer with, we will never know.
Yeah. Sorry, Carter.
All right. Another 180-point team this week was A. Brack. And
Friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show. Sometimes he's, usually sitting here with us. So fortunately, we won't have his perspective this week. But I just think it's funny because of what's happening in the Pac-5, and then you just have Brock, who's quietly trying to remind us why he's one of the best teams in the league, but he just can't put it all together. And unlike you and Tim, he's just not necessarily getting any kind of benefit of the doubt in terms of winning bad performances. So currently the 3rd scoring team in the league, currently the 3rd WIB in the league, 180 points this week. 3-3 puts him a game out in the Pac-5 race, however.
Okay. So,
from what I'm seeing from, nearly halfway through the season, Brock's going to be just fine. I would say that he is well in position to win the Pac-5 despite not holding that lead currently.
Yeah, he's been he had the whole thing last year where he was sort of the sleeper team. Really, he didn't have his full potential all season, and then he came back, won the championship. This season was sort of the beginning at the start, but he's starting to kick things in here, and this team's finally doing what we all expected it to do. In a nice week this week with 180 points. I mean, really all around good effort from his squad. Antonio had a nice little ricochet touchdown, which helped out. But yeah, I mean, I know sitting atop the Pac 5 right now with Tim feels nice, but just looking at Brock's team, I know it's going to be tough to hold him off with the firepower he's coming at us with.
Right. And I mean, since his 0-2 start, he is 3-1, averaging 174.8 points per game. So obviously one of the highest scoring teams over that stretch, slightly higher than my team over that 4-week period.
Wow. Yeah.
So he's obviously, kicking it into gear, and it's just going to take some time to get there in the record department. But one thing that the team failed to do last week, which ultimately resulted in a loss, was get any kind of firepower from the offense. As we mentioned on the podcast last week, or maybe I tweeted it out, it was his lowest scoring offensive performance since 2013. And he responded with a 109.2, second highest of the week. And the offense is still comfortably sitting at the number 2 scoring rank right now. So the offense came back, showed us the potential that they all have when they get going, the Brady Gronk connection and Antonio Brown and things like that. So, I mean, for me, with your team, probably not going to be able to sustain what it's doing, and Tim kind of falling apart as we move into the later parts of the year, I think Brock is eventually going to overtake and probably comfortably win the Pac-5.
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say it, it's going to be tough for us to maintain what's going on here, and Brock is just, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but definitely, if we had to make a pick for the division, it's got to be Brock. He's just too good everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, like anything can happen. Like you or Tim could easily make the playoffs still.
Yeah.
But like you said, like from a prediction standpoint, like if I have to pick, like it seems like Brock is in pretty good shape. So
yeah, nothing to worry about there anymore. After the 0-2 start that had the league stirring.
Yeah. So Brock beats Josh this week, which obviously nobody's surprised by that. But what they may be surprised to know is that Josh, who is one of the 1-5 teams, which obviously people kind of expected that to happen. But Josh is also not 1-5 in a gross way yet. Like he's 1-5 in a unlucky way, honestly. He's 0.18 luck factor right now. Scoring, I think he's 8th in scoring. So obviously, like that's not good. But at the same time, it's not really 1-5 bad.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's the result of my incredible luckiness. Other teams are going to take the hits. It's got to go out somewhere. So in these teams, it's unfortunate, but I mean, the defense is performing at a level where he could be doing better than what he is if he had a sustainable offense. But I mean,
and that's honestly probably a lot of the reason for his somewhat success is the strength of his defense, which has been pretty consistent all season.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the number 1 scoring linebacker right now in Telvin Smith, averaging 12 points a game. So, and really all around, just really solid defense. So it's nice because you build that defense. It seems like the top like you and Dan have that defense, which just gives a nice baseline each week for you to improve on. So now he's got this groundwork laid out on the defensive side. If he can just, he's got draft picks for the future. If he can just figure out the offensive side, it won't be too long before maybe we'll see Josh on the rise.
I definitely agree. And Telvin Smith is one of those drafted and developed players for Josh. So he, I feel like we talk about this a lot, but I think it really is important to say that it pays to draft defensive players.
Yeah, I remember one of my original tweets as the web stats guy was how the late round, like third, fourth round defensive drafted players are like almost all of them are still on rosters and are producing really well, which is crazy to think about. Like to be honest, my first draft, the rookie draft I was in, I didn't even target any defensive players because I didn't even think about it. I was all like, all right, let me try and find some really good skill position players. I didn't even think about drafting a defensive player. But then again, you guys have really benefited from taking those guys in the late rounds that have the high potential, and pretty much most of them have panned out to be what we expected them to be, which is, I mean, it's crazy to think about. We trade these third and fourth round picks for basically nothing, and you could be getting a solid defensive cornerstone for the next many years just off that pick alone.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say was I feel like, third round picks are valued, pretty low, and fourth round picks are essentially just throw-ins, honestly, for many people. But Telvin Smith was a fourth round pick in 2015. Currently the number one scoring linebacker, a cornerstone for Josh's team for 4 years now. This is his fourth year. And so let me just say some of the offensive players that were drafted around Telvin Smith. Trey McBride, Marcus Colston, Cameron Artis-Payne, Chris Conley, and Sammy Coates. So
I don't see many cornerstones out of those guys.
I mean, well, yes, it does pay to maybe take some late round flyers on offensive players, maybe some project guys. Carson Wentz was a fourth round pick. Deshaun Watson was a fourth round pick. But certainly you can find incredible value on the defensive side later on in the draft.
Definitely.
And the teams that have taken advantage of that have benefited from it. So,
I mean, that same draft, you got Landon Collins at 40. So, I mean, like looking back, Joey Bosa picked 40. That was Dave. But, I mean, it's definitely now we know. Like, I don't know, that was something that was wildly sought after. But now looking back at past drafts, it really shows that they can really pan out. It's not like a high risk thing. It's fourth round pick. Just go for it.
Right, and even some of the third round selections. Reuben Foster was a third round pick last year, and now he is obviously getting ready to take the reins. They cut Navarro Bowman because of him. Yeah. So that's clearly going to be a piece of Brock's team for probably a long time.
Yeah.
So So that's the tangent on defensive players.
I had to throw that out and throw that in there.
Yeah. All right. Dan and Calvin, because honestly, there's pretty much a big three in web right now, and Dan is the third that we have not talked about yet. So Dan scored 168 points this week. In the last 4 weeks, since going 0-2 to begin the season, Dan is 4-0 and is scoring 180.2 points per game. We're pretty used to seeing some really wild Dan runs in web. But the question is, how long does this run continue? Because he's been the best team in web over the last 4 weeks. He's the only team over that period that hasn't lost. He's the highest scoring team over that period. He has a week high over that period. He has a 200-point game over that period. I mean, I think that we definitely, I'm obviously 5-1, the best record in the league and leading the Big Five. Dan's 4-2, tied for second in the Big Five with Parker. But, just with what has happened since the early parts of the season, Dan has hit the gas pedal.
Mm-hmm.
And he is making a case that he could be considered the hottest or best team in web right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the running back trio of Le'Veon, Melvin, and Howard is just enough to carry a team on its own. That's just crazy to have all those guys who are all fairly young still on the same team. And then, I mean, obviously the wide receiver situation. I feel like every week we talk about how uh, the production hasn't been the same. Demarius had a decent week. Jarvis had a decent week. Started Garcon, who did okay. It's I mean, with AJ on a bye, that's what you can ask for. And the other thing is Sammy is still nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Combined 2.8 points over the last 3 weeks. So, I mean, looking at the team, obviously the defense, you said is it the highest scoring in the league still?
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, you got that plus the running backs. Seems like the recipe for success. Good defense and that core of running backs. That's what the philosophy that your team's using pretty well right now. And it's working very well for Dan as well. I mean, the lack of wide receiver production can be made up for in that. And obviously the loss of Rodgers could be tough, but he addressed that in a trade on Sunday, Alex Smith for John Brown and a third. So, I mean, just
Alex Smith and a third for John Brown.
Yeah, that's my bad. Man, I can't get that trade straight.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah, but I mean, even just the depth on this team, like Kamara still lurking back there waiting for his time, and Njoku, it's just like it speaks to what Dan has done for this team and how well it's really shaped out for him, like every year basically of its existence.
I mean, that's obviously been the story of Dan. You know, he's consistently been a great team. He's consistently drafted well, traded at the right times. And I think that right now, what you just said with the running back plus defense combo, I think that has a lot to do with something that Dan asked on Twitter that we'll talk about a little bit more in depth later, which is wide receiver scoring. Because honestly, not having great wide receivers this season hasn't really mattered as much because there aren't a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
Or the ones that are good are not typically thought of as the premier receivers, and therefore they're more dispersed throughout the league, whereas in previous seasons they've been concentrated on those really good teams.
Yeah.
So obviously the Le'Veon Melvin combo is like massive. Like it was like over 50 points this week. That's like almost more than Carter had for his entire offense this week. So, yeah. And the Rodgers injury is, I mean, it can't be downplayed that that's also a huge deal because Rodgers has had, you know, he's Rodgers. So, I mean, obviously he's been having a great season and fantasy wise has been having a great season. That's like 20 some points that's now missing from the lineup.
Yeah.
Every week. Goes out, makes the trade for Alex Smith, who was the number 1 or 2 scoring quarterback going into this week. So, you know, can Alex Smith sustain that kind of production? Maybe. The Chiefs' offense looked a little bit lackluster this week, but he still managed to have, what was it, like 15 points?
Yeah, even in what seemed like a subpar performance, still put up a solid total. So even in a down game, you know.
Right. And to trade John Brown, who's a player that's been obviously on Dan's team for a long time, and who, you know, was kind of one of Dan's guys for a long time, trades him. You know, he's not seeing the lineup anymore. And, you know, Dave gets a nice quality young receiver, youngish receiver. That he will honestly probably be starting every single week.
Yeah.
And Dan gets quarterback, a temporary quarterback, because like we were talking about this weekend, waivers for quarterbacks are not existent right now.
Not good.
And in previous years, I mean, there's been very, very little trade market for quarterbacks just because, you know, oh, I'll just go pick up Ben Roethlisberger. Like, why do I have to trade for anybody? This season, Ben Roethlisberger's on the wire, and he's awful, as is everybody else around him. So, I mean, it does put a little bit of a premium on quarterbacks right now in terms of trade. So, Yeah, but I think it was a good trade. Obviously, he needed it. And Dan also made another trade this weekend. Very low-key trade. But Dante Moncrief was sent from the Moneymakers to Dan's team for Jordan Matthews.
Yeah, very lucky. It was literally you guys were like, I don't like seeing this guy on my roster anymore. Let's trade. So you traded both of those guys for each other. So, I mean,
and honestly, I would recommend doing that for anybody who has a player on their bench right now that they just hate looking at. If you have a player that you hate looking at, find another team that hates one of their similar players and just swap them. Because you feel instantly better about your bench.
I can't imagine just seeing a fresh face, a fresh name on the roster.
I mean, Jordan Matthews is hurt and honestly is just whatever. Similar player, kind of similar levels of production, maybe a little bit better because Moncrief was hurt last year, but honestly, just seeing that name is so much better than Moncrief, and I don't know why. It's just oh yeah, it's an exciting name. What's Jordan Matthews gonna do for me? It's just I've had Moncrief for 3 years. This kind of is what it was, and I was just kind of done with it.
Yeah, ready to move on. And yeah. But
he did. What did he have? 60 yards last night. So
he had 6
best game of the year.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, all right. Kelvin is our other 1-5 squad. And kind of the common theme with all of these 1-5 teams is that they are all having statistically unlucky years. None more so than our defending runner-up, Kelvin.
Really?
Kelvin is currently at a luck factor of 0.14, which is very, very low.
What is my luck factor at?
You're the only team over 1 right now.
Okay.
1.29.
Wow. All right.
I mean, that is a product of not having enough wins in the win column to balance out with the theoretical wins. So as we move closer to the end of the season, the luck factor becomes more accurate.
Okay, yeah.
But you are the only team right now that has more wins than they have theoretical wins.
That's pretty wild.
So yeah, impressive stuff from your team. But obviously the 0.14 is not going to that's not the kind of number that would be there at the end of the season.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that the unluckiest team ever had a 0.6 luck factor or a 0.4 or something. Yeah. Okay. So 0.45 was Dave last season, and that was the unluckiest team ever. So, but just on a straight ratio standpoint, this is the lowest luck factor right now. He's currently at a theoretical wins of 7. So go figure, Kelvin is performing at a 7-7 level, but he is 1-5 right now. So unfortunately, probably not going to be a 7-7 season for Kelvin at this point. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to describe it. He's lost 4 in a row. 5th scoring team right now. Mm-hmm. So that typical middle of the road team that's normally 2-3 right now or something, or 3-3. And he just hasn't gotten the wins where you'd normally maybe see some. So
yeah, I don't know, man. When you have to start Charkandic West at running back, it's not good. It's not what you want.
It was a rough week for the starting lineup, certainly. But honestly, for Kelvin, it honestly might be kind of a good thing.
Yeah, finally.
Because he's finally he's performing at this level where he's not really this bad, but Kelvin has made 2 first-round picks in his Webb career. Okay, or I'm sorry, 3. 3 first-round picks. He has not made a first-round pick since 2015. Here are Kelvin's 3 first-round picks. Brandon Cooks, Kelvin Benjamin, and Nelson Aguilar.
Okay.
So, like, he's drafted players that have been, honestly, like, good. Like, he's had good success drafting in the first round. All of those players were still on his roster heading into this season. He trades Kelvin Benjamin. He's currently starting Cooks and Aguilar.
Mhm.
So, like, I mean, for this team to now, 3 years later, inject another first-round pick into the lineup and probably his highest ever.
Yeah, that's what he needs. He needs a high first. He needs that guy. He needs really needs like a stud running back or something. I don't know. And he just needs that star power on the squad to really brighten up. Obviously, Cooks is there. He's one of the better receivers in the league, but I don't know. He needs just that guy he can rely on week to week.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of always been a thing with Kelvin's team is like, who is the guy? Like it was LaShawn McCoy. Like that was like his bona fide like stud. But obviously he's getting a little bit older now. And for Kelvin to have a top 3 or 4 pick this season would probably be a huge thing for that team just to inject that into the lineup, which, I mean, it isn't great, but at the same time, it's not bad. And it did ultimately bring him to a title game last year. So as much as it doesn't necessarily look like sexy, I guess, like there is production there,
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
And he traded Crabtree for a first. Unfortunately, that will not come until 2019. But he's still making an effort to get picks. He has 2 firsts and 2 seconds in 2019.
All right.
So if this turns into a rebuild, which is kind of where it's headed, he's actually set up pretty well for that.
Yeah.
For obviously this draft and then the 2019 draft as well. So, all right. What do we got yet? Looks like Parker and Dave. Is that the last one?
Yep.
Yeah, Parker and Dave. Interconference game of the week. And dang, was it a dandy. Dave upset Parker.
Yeah, crazy. Didn't see that one coming.
I mean, like, oh man, I don't understand Parker's team.
We said he was back, or well, no. Start of the season was like, okay, it might be regression, and like he's like, wow, he might not actually be good. And then he had a huge game. It's like, all right, Parker's back, and now it's just like, is he not back? What's going on here?
And honestly, that just kind of seems like what his season is going to be
It's
this
a roller
year.
coaster, and it's probably gonna. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
I really think that's what it's going to be. Like this team has the potential to put up huge point totals, but it also has the potential to put up like nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's just honestly going to be one of those things where it's like, what is Parker going to do this week? Like, I don't think he can like count on himself this season to like be that, consistent dominant force like he was last season.
No.
And obviously that's apparent because he is the only team this season to have a week low and week high within this same season here. And he has now 2 week lows after picking up his second this week. So it's just like the definition of roller coaster.
Yeah, and the whole quarterback thing about Jameis and Cam. Now Jameis got hurt. Doesn't seem to be too serious, but it's like that's up in the air. And you got Gillisley. You don't know what you're getting. And I don't know. It's weird. He didn't get the defensive production this week either. Like low-key, not a great performance from a usual,
not at all.
Usual stellar defense. What didn't look good at all. So
there's 39 points from Parker's defense this week.
Yeah,
which is Parker's first defensive performance in the 30s since 20. I don't want to say it till I know. 2013. Yep.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
what I thought.
Yeah,
2013. So this was a next level bad defensive performance from Parker this week.
Yeah. So obviously that didn't help him out at all.
But yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be around. Like he's definitely going to be one of the teams that's, well within that fourth playoff spot contention. He picks up a few lucky wins here and there, and all of a sudden, like he's looking at maybe even being in the Big Five race. Probably more so looking at that wild card spot, and I think it's just going to be one of those things where he might make some trades, or he needs to do something to try to kind of patch his lineup right now, because it honestly just feels like it. I don't know, like it just feels like thrown together.
Yeah,
like the running backs are kind of just like misfit, like mismatched.
That's how it was at the beginning of the season. It was like below Powell, Gillisley. Like, is he going to be able to do stuff with this? And then he goes and gets Miller. But like we all know, like he's just that's what it, like his stat line 9, 8, 6, 25 had one big game, 8, 8. It's like what you're getting each week, but it's not like you're going to get a huge production value from Lamar. And then Doug Martin coming back, he's been good since getting back. So I mean that helps. And then his wide receiving core, I still like a lot. I mean Mike Evans, and Nuke, and Tay.
Yeah,
I mean that's
big,
huge. But I don't know.
Hopkins had like a down week this week. He still had a touchdown.
Yeah.
But just like 19 yards. But yeah, I mean, I like obviously I still like I like this team on paper, like in relation to other teams. Like I still think he has like one of the best lineups, even without like necessarily rock solid running backs. But
yeah.
Yeah, like he's at a 3.8 WIB right now. So I mean, like the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Like we talk about like having that big three. It's like I'm averaging 170, Dan's 161, and Brock's 159. And then you drop off to the number 4 scoring team, which is Parker, and he's at 140.7. So it's a 19-point disparity between number 3 and number 4.
So yeah, it's going to be a fight between these. It's looking like what me, Parker, and Tim all have the same record right now, vying for that 4th spot.
And that's probably what it's going to end up being.
Yeah, it's going to come down to which team can put it all together.
I mean, if Dave hits like a weird lucky run here in the middle of the season, like maybe, I mean, hashtag keep it weird, man. Like,
yeah,
with how your team's performed, Dave's 3-3, like.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't count Dave out yet. Let's segue right into Dave's team. Big week from him. Well, not really big, but I mean, big win for him. Mark Ingram turning back the clock, 25 points.
Yeah, that was huge.
Running back production was huge for him this week. 19 from Hyde, 13 from McCaffrey.
And that's one of the things too, was just seeing that out of McCaffrey. I think was, because we've kind of been talking about it for weeks now about, when is McCaffrey going to get there for this team? And I mean, like 13 is not like a great total or anything, but like, it's just a nice sign.
Yeah.
Like you have that like Hyde and McCaffrey and Ingram combo that all of a sudden like kind of puts up a very like nice little like week. And Dave ends up being the number 4 scoring offense out of it.
Yeah, that's huge for him.
If he can get that kind of production to continue, like get McCaffrey to kind of heat up here and kind of stay in that range, keep Hyde rolling, and then obviously Ingram, like this is pretty much an outlier week, but like,
going forward, if he does start putting wins together, like it'll be good moving forward to like win games. But if it doesn't pan out for him, these guys will be good. Like Hyde will be a good trade chip, maybe even Ingram. Well, Ingram, we'll see. He doesn't gain a lot of value around the league, as I've found out. But like Hyde's a good trade chip for him moving forward if it doesn't work out. So like things are sitting pretty well for Dave right now. He's got to be happy with what his team's done, I feel, sitting at 3-3.
I think for sure he's probably very happy with the team. And you never know what's going to happen. You know, he's the number 9 scoring team, but
Yeah, that's wild.
the
Nine
number
scoring
10
team.
and number 9 scoring teams are combined 7 and 5. So
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
yeah, that's crazy. Well, all right. So that's week 6. Like fits right in with the theme. Hashtag keep it weird. We are definitely keeping it weird. And we are turning our attention to week 7, also known as the halfway point of the season.
Oh,
Last year at this time, or roughly about next week, we were recording the mid-season review podcast.
wow. What a great podcast. If you get a chance, go back and listen to that. I did before the season started just to get the fantasy football juices flowing, and it's just it's funny. It's you got good insight from everyone except Tim. And it was great all around episode. Top of the line.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm sure we're going to try to do something like that again next week for that. Maybe not like having 6 people there, but
Yeah.
hopefully we can get a nice little amount.
Yeah.
Josh is getting married this weekend,
Yeah.
so kind of exciting stuff.
Definitely.
But yeah, week 7, halfway marker. That's kind of when things get kind of real. You know, it's no longer like, okay, this is just the start of the year. It's like, oh, we're already halfway through this year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, let's just dive into these games because there are definitely a few pretty big ones.
This is nice. This is a nice slate of games we got.
So starting off with the big 5, Parker and Dan have their first clash of the season. A little bit different from the Parker-Dan games that we have been used to seeing, but at the same time, it's a huge opportunity for Parker, who could make a very big statement with a victory this week over Dan.
Yeah, I mean, the roller coaster. I think. I mean, let's just hop on it. I say he takes down Dan here. I don't know. All my instincts are telling me Dan's gonna win, but Parker's just such a wild card right now. I can't go against him here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that obviously we just talked about Dan with the 4-0 in the last 4 weeks and being the hottest team and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's traditionally done very well against Parker, but you know, it's just like it's one of those things where you want to pick Parker because you kind of feel like this is going to be the week that, you know, he decides to really show up. And, you know, with Dan being down Rodgers, kind of some adversity in the starting lineup. But I'm going to have to go with Dan. Just going to have to go with the hot hand. So other big 5 matchup of the week is Calvin and Carter. Ooh. So 2 of the 1-5 teams, which are really not that bad. So one of them will be a 2-win team heading into the halfway marker.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take Carter here just because I don't know. I feel like he's had some bad luck. Now I guess not as bad as Calvin according to the luck factor, but give me Carter here. Well, I like him.
They essentially have the exact same luck factor, like it's a difference of 0.01.
Oh wow!
I mean,
all right,
they've had very similar seasons. They're like almost scoring, like they're only like separated by like 1.7 points per game.
So good matchup actually.
It's actually kind of a nice little matchup. It's unfortunate that they're both 1-5,
mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna take. Last 4 weeks, Carter has actually been the higher scoring team despite having a sub 100 game in that time frame. I'm gonna go with Carter, but I think it's gonna be a nail biter style game. I think they're gonna play to their stats, and it's gonna be super close. So. All right, Pack 5, Brock and Dave.
Ooh.
Both 3-3.
Yeah. Well, you got to give me Austin here, but I mean, after what Dave did this week to Parker. Same record for these guys. Could you imagine if Dave took down Brock here to move ahead of him in the standings?
That would be very wild.
Crazy after all this praise about how I'm pretty sure Brock's going to go take over the division. If Dave could pull off a statement win here, that would be hashtag keep it weird. It would be.
Yeah. If Dave could sneak it out, that would be winning record into the halfway marker, better record than Brock at the halfway marker.
Mm-hmm.
There's only been 1 week this season in which Dave would have beaten Brock had they played. And with Brock's team kind of trending up, I think I'm going to have to pick Brock.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we can hope for a close game as observers. Because I think it would be really, really wild to watch.
Yeah.
Monday night, situation where Brock really needs something to win or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, but I'll go Dave. Brock.
Yeah, Brock.
And then other Pac-5 game is you, Caleb, and Josh.
Yeah, I'm going to take me there.
The statistics would say that Josh is the favorite.
I know.
In the matchup. But honestly, 5-2. 5-2 at the halfway marker.
All right.
Just whatever, dude.
This would be a real kick in the gut, though. This would be one of the losses that would happen to me. You come off beating Tim. It's just all right, things are starting to come around for me, and then I lose to Josh.
The back down to reality game.
Yeah, which would be a tough blow to me, to be honest. But we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I'll go with you just because you have a giant horseshoe up your ass, and until I see it fall out, I'm just gonna have to keep picking you. But yeah, stats would say Josh by a decent amount. And then interconference game of the week. We got a nice little matchup here.
Oh, baby.
Tim and Korf.
We might as well make it. Well, yeah, I'm going to call it game of the week. Yeah, Parker, Dan, Tim.
There's 3 games that I could viably see people voting for. But, this one's just fun.
Yeah. Oh, man. Honestly, is the line really in Tim's favor here by 7 points? Oh, you don't have.
I don't have a quarterback.
All right, that'll put it back in your favor. Well, I mean, Zeke's playing this week against the 49ers. Ty had a bad week and Tyreek had a bad week, which means they're gonna have big weeks this week. YOLO, give me Tim.
All right. So, Tim is actually 3-2 against me all time.
All right.
So he's had my number a little bit. I'm going to look for this matchup to the defense, in which I am scoring more than 10 points per game, higher than Tim. And with that buffer and his inconsistent offense, I am going to take myself.
All right.
All right. Nice. Nice job. All right. So we do have some questions.
Oh, yeah. Let's hop right over.
We actually kind of have a lot of them. I know
we sort of answered some of these.
Yeah. So we'll just hit the ones that we didn't really get to talk about yet. Let's see here. Okay. First question was the best worst team and the worst best team. Probably kind of covered this already, but just to concretely state it, the best worst team is obviously Caleb. 4-2, lowest scoring team, lowest WIB, performing at a 3 and 11 level, already 4-2. And the worst best team is Kelvin. So 1-5 is our worst record, 3 ways. And Kelvin currently leading scoring and WIB for those 1-5 teams. Projected, obviously, like we said, 7-7 type style of a season, and he's currently 1-5. Potentially could go 1-6.
Yeah.
With a matchup with Carter. So, yeah, pretty weird stuff.
Yeah.
The other question from Josh was, is Chris Thompson actually good? And I mean,
Yeah.
okay, let me just say this about Chris Thompson. Okay, so back in the day when Chris Thompson was at Florida State, the year that he would eventually be drafted, I was like, God, this kid kind of looks nice. Like, I kind of like this guy. This was like prior to like all of the scouting and like Scouts Elite and all this stuff. Obviously, this is just like watching Florida State games. And so like he gets into the NFL. I actually had him on my team like his rookie season. So like in Webb, like I had just like had him on my bench or whatever. It's just like you don't really think anything of it. Like, he's kind of just like that guy. Obviously, passed between rosters like over the course of 5 years. Sure, a lot of people have like had him for a week or two or whatever. But I think that one thing about Chris Thompson is that he's always had the ability, and he's always been like he's always been what he is, which is like that third down pass catching back. Yeah. And I think that this season is the first year maybe that he's had an opportunity to be the premier back in the backfield. You know, because they had like the Alfred Morrises, like that were kind of like the workhorse guys. And then you like Rob Kelly last year, like was, you know, settling into that starting role. It's like Fat Rob's been banged up all season. Perrine like had a touchdown this week, but he's not looked great. From what I've heard. So like Thompson's like that one guy right there that's kind of like, okay, he's been here a while, he's skilled, like let's get him the ball more.
Yeah, it's not like he hasn't had like a huge uptick in carries. Well, he did against the 49ers this week with 16, but it's like it seems like they're just integrating him better into the offense. Like his skill set is like getting him outside the numbers, get the ball in his hands, like screen passes and whatnot, and he just makes plays. So I mean, it seems like they're finally utilizing him to his full potential, and he's really flourishing in that offense there.
Yeah, and I think another part of it too is like they don't necessarily have like a lot of like weapons. Like
yeah,
they had like, you know, Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson and stuff like that. And now it's like Terrell Pryor is their number one receiver. Doxson's still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Jordan Reed is, you know, like being Jordan Reed.
Yeah. This is like the one electric playmaker they have on offense. So yeah. I mean, they're just finally utilizing him.
So honestly, to answer the question, I would say yes. Chris Thompson is actually good, and this is probably the first season in which they're actually like choosing to utilize him, and it's obviously paying off.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm gonna trade him for Amari Cooper. Gosh, so stop sending me that, please. But yeah, he's definitely good.
All right. Let's see. Where's the other one? Okay, yeah. So the last thing then for the show this week, just kind of a bigger thing, the wide receivers. So we investigated this on Sunday because we had the inkling that it was true. And what we found was that the top end wide receivers are on par with previous years for scoring in terms of an average per game total. But where there's a significant drop-off is that third level. So you have your wide receiver 1 averaging like 13 points a game. You have a range from about like 13 to like 11, maybe 10 for the wide receiver 1s. For the wide receiver 2s, you're sitting at about like 10 to 9 points. Traditionally, the wide receiver 3s have been at like 9 or 8 points, and I believe what we found was this year they're at like 6.
Yeah.
So it's honestly just the fact that it's like I didn't have a third wide receiver on my team, and like I was like, oh wow, this is a huge hole, and like, oh man, this sucks, like Tyrell Williams. But like I was still winning, and it was like, okay, well maybe this isn't a big deal. But it wasn't a big deal because that's been a common thing.
Yeah.
Like the third wide receiver spot for most teams, I would guess, has probably been a similar kind of story because those players are not scoring the same as they have traditionally before.
Yeah, and I actually found this tweet Ian Kenyon put out. I made sure to take note of it. Only 6 quarterbacks are on pace to throw more than 4,000 yards this year. And if you look back, 13 in 2016, 12 in 2015, 11 in 2014, it's like unprecedented, like how low that number is. Only 6 on pace to throw over 4,000. It's just passing yards in general are obviously down here for that.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense actually too, because I think that the player, like obviously every single player, like whether you're Antonio Brown or whoever, has like off weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's been more often this season in which
Yeah.
those types of players have a down week.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
we're only through 6 games. And like, yeah, Antonio's got like his 150 and a touchdown games and stuff. He's also got like very bad games.
Yeah.
And like I just kind of feel like that's like been a thing for like all of the receivers. So it's like not every one of them has like a good game every single week, but I still feel like with what you just said with the quarterbacks, like the passing yards are down, the passing touchdowns are down, and those like elite receivers are feeling that.
Yep.
So I think that having some instability at wide receiver this season is honestly probably like not as big of a deal as it would have normally been, because it's been such a widespread issue.
Yeah, it's having that stable running back core, which I've been talking about a few times already. It seems to be the way to go, which is like the whole like the 0 running back approach, or like in Dynasty, it was always like having that young core of wide receivers. Like that's what you want, because you'll get production for years and years. But it's like right now you need like stable running back position. Otherwise, you're going to be so inconsistent at the wide receiver position. That's what you're seeing from teams like me and Parker. It's like we just don't get well, I mean, I suck everywhere. But besides that, like the running back production, it's just you need that on a weekly basis, because you never know what you're going to get from your receivers, really, even like the best ones this year, as you see.
Yeah. So I think that it's funny because like the whole thing with like, you know, when you play like a redraft fantasy is like get your running backs.
Yep.
And with Dynasty, it's get your receivers. And with us having 3 wide receiver spots, it was honestly like more wide receiver heavy to begin with, because if you had 4 super good receivers, you could start all of them.
Yep.
And like that kind of outweighed your 2 running back spots. But this season, with the inconsistencies, now we really see like, okay, the teams with the really, really good running backs are, you know, soaring ahead of the teams that do not.
Yep.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's been a weird year still. You know, we're almost halfway through and we're still averaging 142 points a game, which is not this is not close. We've been in the 150s every single season since we expanded the rosters. And so, I mean, it just really breeds this whole kind of wide open concept that this season has been so far.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that like good teams are 1-5. They're not good teams, like solid teams are 1-5.
Yeah.
It's just like very weird stuff. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, man.
I don't know. It's going to be wild coming up to the second half of the season here, down the stretch. See where the real teams, and if some of these teams can put it together and make a run, it'll be fun.
Big week coming up. Fun little week 7. Got some big games on the slate. And yeah, I think that's all for me.
Yeah, that sounds about good.
All right, guys. Let's make it a great week 7.